Imagine discovering that every bedtime story your parents told you is real. Every monster under the bed, every shadow in the corner, every whispered legend of creatures that once walked among the stars. All true. Now imagine you're not the child in this story. You're the monster. You're the legend. You're the nightmare that entire civilizations have spent millennia trying to forget. For 3,000 years, the galaxy has known peace. Advanced civilizations trade, explore, and prosper while dismissing ancient tales of a savage species called humans as primitive folklore, stories told to frighten children and explain away the unexplainable. But folklore has a way of becoming reality when you least expect it, and sometimes the monsters in the stories remember exactly why they were feared. Welcome to the day the galaxy learned that some legends are warnings. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the satisfied murmur of 1,000 different species conducting business as usual. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire adjusted his ceremonial scales as he reviewed the day's agenda, his reptilian features showing mild irritation at yet another trade dispute between the mining guilds of Kepler, 442, and the agricultural worlds of the Andorian Collective. 3,000 years of peace had made the galaxy soft, he mused. The greatest conflicts they faced now were over shipping routes and resource allocation. How wonderfully boring civilization had become. Next item, announced the Council's AI moderator, its crystalline voice echoing through the vast chamber. Unscheduled transmission from Sector 7 Delta 9, origin unknown. Zethkar's attention sharpened. Sector 7 Delta 9 was deep space, far beyond the established trade routes. Nothing lived out there except for the occasional mineral prospector and the automated beacon stations that marked the galaxy's edge. "Display the transmission," commanded Council Prime Yara, her graceful tentacles flowing as she gestured from her position at the chamber center. The holographic display materialized above the assembly, showing a figure that caused immediate confusion among the gathered representatives. It appeared mostly humanoid, but there was something unsettling about its proportions. Too tall, too lean, with predatory grace that made Zethkar's ancient instincts whisper warnings his modern mind tried to dismiss. The being's face was partially obscured by what looked like primitive armor, scarred and battle-worn. When it spoke, its voice carried an accent that translation protocols struggled to process. "Greetings to the Galactic Council," the figure began, and there was something in its tone that made the chamber fall silent. "We are the species you call human. We have returned." A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the assembly. Zethkar felt his own mouth twitch in amusement. "Humans, the mythical species from children's stories? The supposed progenitor race that ancient folklore claimed once ruled the stars before vanishing into legend?" Ambassador Quill of the Aquarian Federation raised one of her forearms. "With respect to whatever species you represent, the Council appreciates creative approaches to first contact, but claiming to be a fictional race is hardly fictional." The human's head tilted, and even through the transmission static, something predatory gleamed in its eyes. "Tell me, Ambassador Quill of Aquarius Prime, do you still tell your younglings the story of the Wet Ones? The tale of how your people learned to fear the deep ocean?" Quill's blue-tinted skin paled to an almost transparent shade. The Wet Ones were indeed part of Aquarian folklore. Ancient predators that supposedly once hunted her people in their homeworld's deepest trenches. But how could this being know such obscure mythology? Or perhaps, the human continued, its gaze somehow finding Zethkar despite the impossibility of seeing through a holographic display. Ambassador Zethkar would prefer to discuss the scale hunters, the ones your ancestors claimed could track a Vorthan through hyperspace itself. Zitkar's ceremonial skills retailed involuntarily. The Scale Hunters were nightmare fuel from his species' ancient past. Mythical beings that supposedly hunted Vorthons for sport across the galaxy. Every Vorthon child knew the stories, but they were just stories, weren't they? "This is preposterous," declared Minister Krell of the Silicon Confederacy, his crystalline form resonating with indignation. "These are children's tales, folklore, primitive attempts to explain natural phenomena or teach moral lessons. No one actually believes, Minister Krell." The human's voice cut through his objection like a blade through crystal. "Your people call them the Sharbreakers, don't they? The ones who supposedly learned to sing your people's resonant frequency and shatter entire cities with their voices." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species began shouting at once, some demanding explanations, others calling for the transmission to be terminated. But Zethkar noticed that many remained silent, their faces reflecting the same growing dread he felt clawing at his chest. Council Prime Yara raised her tentacles for silence, her bioluminescent patterns flashing in the command sequence that brought order to the chamber. "Whoever you are," she said to the human, "these stories exist across hundreds of species and thousands of worlds. They cannot possibly all refer to the same source." The human smiled, and Zethkar wished it hadn't. There was no warmth in that expression, only the satisfaction of a predator that had cornered its prey. "Can't they?" the human asked. "Tell me, Prime Yara, when your people first achieved spaceflight 12,000 years ago, what did they find on the third moon of your homeworld?" Yara's tentacles went rigid. The ruins on Yantara's third moon were classified information, known only to the highest levels of her government. Ancient structures that predated her people's civilization by millennia, filled with warning glyphs that roughly translated to beware the returners or fear those who come back. "How do you—" she began, but the human continued. "Every species in this chamber has them. Ruins, warnings, stories passed down through generations, all describing the same thing. A species that came before, that ruled the galaxy, that hunted among the stars, and then vanished. You convince yourselves we were myth because myth was safer than truth." Ambassador Quill found her voice again. "Even if we accept your impossible claim, humans supposedly disappeared millennia ago. Where have you been?" "Healing," the human replied simply. "Learning. Preparing." "Preparing for what?" Zethkar asked, though he dreaded the answer. The human smile widened. "For war." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. For long moments, no one spoke. Then, the questions began flying like projectiles. "Sir," called a young aide to Minister Krell, "I'm receiving reports from border stations. Unknown ships are appearing throughout the galaxy. They're not responding to hails, but they're not attacking either. They're just watching." More reports flooded in. Strange vessels appearing near major trade routes, monitoring stations, military installations. Ships unlike anything in the galactic databases, with designs that seem to incorporate elements from every known species yet belong to none. Council Prime Yara called for emergency session protocols. Within hours, military commanders and intelligence chiefs were conferencing in from across the galaxy, their reports painting an increasingly disturbing picture. "The ships are clearly advanced," reported Admiral Torex of the Combined Fleet. "Our sensors can barely track them, and their energy signatures are unlike anything we've encountered. But here's what's truly unsettling. They're not just watching random locations. They're positioned at strategic points that suggest intimate knowledge of our infrastructure, our weaknesses." "How many?" asked General Voss of the Terran Defense Coalition. conservative estimate, several thousand vessels distributed throughout Council space. They appeared simultaneously across a territory spanning 12 sectors. The coordination required. Admiral Torex paused. It's beyond what we previously thought possible. Zethkar studied the tactical displays showing reported human ship positions. The pattern was clear to anyone with military training. These weren't exploration ships or traders. This was a fleet position for siege. What do we know about actual human history? Asked Council Prime Yara. Not the folklore, but documented evidence. Chief archaeologist Dr. Mindara of the Academic Collective activated her own presentation. That's where it gets interesting. For years, we've dismissed certain archaeological anomalies because they didn't fit our understanding of galactic history. Ancient ruins that appear on worlds across the galaxy, all sharing similar architectural elements. Genetic markers in dozens of species that suggest common ancestry or genetic tampering. Advanced technology fragments that predate known civilization. She pulled up holographic images of artifacts from across the galaxy. If we stop dismissing these as coincidences and start seeing them as evidence of a single, ancient civilization, it fits, whispered Ambassador Quill. By the depths, it all fits. Dr. Mindara nodded grimly. Based on carbon dating and other analysis, we can establish a timeline. Approximately 50,000 years ago, a highly advanced species existed throughout the galaxy. Evidence suggests they were involved in genetic manipulation, planetary engineering, and what can only be described as species cultivation. Cultivation? Zethkar didn't like the sound of that word. Many of our species show signs of genetic manipulation in their ancient past. Modifications that seem designed to enhance specific traits, intelligence, physical capabilities, even aesthetic features. It's as if someone was improving us. The implications settled over the chamber like a shroud. If humans had once ruled the galaxy, if they had manipulated and shaped the development of every species now sitting in the council chamber, then their return wasn't just unexpected. It was terrifying. Sir, another aide rushed into the chamber. We're receiving another transmission. Same source. Display it, ordered Yara, her tentacles coiling with nervous energy. The human appeared again, but this time the image was clearer, more detailed. Zethkar could see scars across its face and hands, evidence of countless battles. Its armor was more visible now, not primitive at all, but so advanced it appeared simple. Behind it, other figures moved in the shadows, their forms suggesting different variations of the human template. Council Prime Yara, the human began, we appreciate your efforts to understand our return. Your archaeologists are more thorough than we expected. Dr. Mindara's analysis is largely correct, though incomplete. Dr. Mindara gasped. They were monitoring council communications in real time. We did not vanish from the galaxy, the human continued. We were driven from it. By you. Chaos erupted in the chamber, but the human's voice cut through it like a laser. Not you personally, of course. Your ancestors. 50,000 years ago, the species we had nurtured, educated, and elevated decided they no longer needed their guardians. They formed an alliance. They used the very technologies we had given them to wage war against us. The historical records began clicking into place in Zethkar's mind. The Great Awakening, as it was known in galactic history, the period when dozens of species simultaneously achieved advanced technology and joined together in the first iteration of what would become the Galactic Council. It had always seemed suspiciously coordinated, but historians had attributed it to parallel evolution. You drove us to the galaxy's edge, the human continued. Hunted us beyond the frontier. tried to exterminate us completely. When that failed, you rewrote history, turned us into myths, monsters, cautionary tales. Convinced yourselves we had never existed at all. That's impossible, protested Minister Krell. There would be records, evidence. There are, the human interrupted. You've simply chosen not to see them. Every species in your council has genetic markers of our influence. Every world bears traces of our technology. Every culture carries stories of our existence. You buried the truth so deep that you convinced even yourselves it was fiction. Council Prime Yara's tentacles were now glowing with stress patterns. What do you want? Why return now? What we want, the human said, and its smile returned, is our galaxy back. As for why now, it paused, looking directly at the camera. We've been waiting for the right moment. Watching, learning. You've grown soft in our absence. Comfortable. Predictable. This is a threat, declared Admiral Torex. We should mobilize the fleet immediately. The human laughed, and the sound sent chills through every being in the chamber. Admiral, your entire combined fleet consists of approximately 47,000 vessels spread across 12 sectors. Impressive by your standards. We have been observing your military exercises, your tactics, your capabilities. And, Torex demanded, your best strategies are ones we taught your ancestors. Your most advanced technologies are crude derivatives of systems we developed. Your greatest military minds think in patterns we established. The human leaned forward slightly. In short, Admiral, you're children playing with toys we gave you. And now the adults have come home. The transmission displayed a new image, star charts showing the positions of human vessels. There were far more than anyone had estimated. Thousands upon thousands of ships, positioned not just around Council space, but within it. Hidden in asteroid fields, behind planetary shadows, in the void between stars. This is your formal notice, the human announced. We are reclaiming our territory. Species that acknowledge our authority and submit to our guidance will be permitted to continue their existence under our protection. Those that resist will be removed. You're talking about conquest, accused Zethkar. Slavery. We're talking about order, the human corrected. The same order that allowed your species to flourish for 50,000 years under our care. You have had your time as independent actors. You have proven that you cannot maintain peace, cannot avoid war, cannot transcend your primitive instincts without guidance. The galaxy has been at peace for 3,000 years, protested Ambassador Quill. Has it? The human tilted its head. What about the mineral wars of Epsilon Eridani? The cetacean genocide? The systematic exploitation of primitive worlds by your mining cartels? You call it peace because you've exported your violence to those too weak to fight back. Uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. The human wasn't wrong. We offer a choice, the human continued. Accept our return and guidance or face the consequences of resistance. You have 72 standard hours to decide. And if we refuse? Council Prime Yara asked quietly. The human's expression didn't change, but something in its eyes grew colder. Then, you will learn why your ancestors created stories about us. Why they turned us into nightmare fuel for their children. Why the deepest part of your genetic memory still screams in terror when you hear our name. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in absolute silence. After several long moments, Admiral Torex spoke first. We need to mobilize everything. Contact the outer territories, recall all fleets, activate emergency protocols. Wait, said Dr. Mandara quietly. Before we do anything irreversible, we need to understand what we're really dealing with. If their claims are true, if they really did create our civilizations. Then, there are creators trying to reclaim their property, finished Zethkar grimly. The question is, are we going to let them? Council Prime Yara's bioluminescent patterns flickered through the spectrum of deep consideration. Emergency session. All member species, all military commanders, all intelligence chiefs. We have 72 hours to decide the fate of galactic civilization. As the chamber emptied, beings hurrying to prepare for what might be their final council session, Zethkar remained in his seat, staring at the now empty holographic display. Somewhere in the back of his mind, genetic memory whispered stories his rational mind had always dismissed. Stories of hunters who could track prey across the void of space itself. Stories of beings who shaped worlds and species with casual ease. Stories of the day the scale hunters would return. Outside the council chambers, across the galaxy, human ships waited in the darkness between stars, patient as death itself. The children were about to remember why they had once feared the dark. Captain Nira Voss of the GSV Retribution stared at the tactical display with growing unease. 68 hours had passed since the human ultimatum, and the situation had deteriorated beyond anyone's worst fears. What had begun as a unified show of defiance was crumbling as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Status report. She ordered her bridge crew, though she dreaded the answer. 17 member species have announced their withdrawal from the Galactic Council, reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Zura. They're declaring themselves neutral territories and requesting human protection. Cowards, muttered Commander Hayes from the weapons station. Smart cowards, corrected Nira grimly. The species that had withdrawn were among the smaller, more vulnerable members of the council. They'd done the math and decided survival trumped pride. What about our military response? She asked. Her tactical officer, a grizzled Vorthan named Orcs, shook his scaled head. Admiral Torex's combined fleet is having trouble maintaining formation. Every time our ships try to coordinate, human vessels appear just outside weapons range. They're not attacking, just watching. It's psychological warfare, and it's working. Through the view screen, Nira could see other ships of the hastily assembled resistance fleet. 200 vessels from a dozen different species, all armed with the most advanced weapons their civilizations could produce. It should have been an impressive sight. Instead, it felt like children playing dress-up with their parents' weapons. Captain, called Lieutenant Zura. Incoming transmission from Earth. Earth. Even the name felt strange. For 3 days, xenoarchaeologists have been working around the clock to piece together humanity's true history. Earth wasn't just another planet. It was the human homeworld, a place dismissed as myth for so long that discovering its real coordinates had required digging through the most ancient navigation charts. Display it, Nira ordered. The holographic figure that appeared was different from the previous human spokesperson. This one was older, wearing what appeared to be formal robes rather than battle armor. Its face showed the lines of age and wisdom, but its eyes held the same predatory intelligence. I am Scholar Commander Marcus Chun, the human announced. I speak for the Restoration Authority. Captain Voss, Commander Hayes, Lieutenant Zura. It addressed each bridge officer by name, causing visible unease among the crew. Your vessel's crew complement is 437 beings from 6 different species. You are currently positioned in the Kepler 442 system, approximately 2 light-years from the human monitoring station designated Waypoint 7. How do you... Nira began, but Marcus continued. Captain, your ship's tactical computer contains 14,000 years of galactic military history, including detailed analyses of human combat techniques from the ancient folklore of your people. Would you like to know how accurate those folklore accounts actually are? A chill ran down Nira's spine. The humans weren't just monitoring their positions. They had somehow accessed their databases, their personnel records, possibly even their tactical systems. "This is impossible," declared Commander Hayes. "Our systems are isolated, quantum encrypted." "Commander, your quantum encryption is based on mathematical principles first developed by human scientists 30,000 years ago. Did you really think we hadn't developed countermeasures?" Marcus's expression remained neutral, but there was amusement in his voice. "Every piece of technology in your fleet, every weapon system, every defensive protocol, they're all derivatives of human innovations. You're trying to fight us with our own creations." The tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts. Human ships, dozens of them, appearing throughout the Resistance fleet formation. They materialized seemingly from nowhere, their advanced stealth systems dropping away to reveal vessels that dwarfed anything in the galactic navy. "How many?" Nero whispered. "Sensors are detecting over 300 human vessels in this system alone," reported Corex, his scales rattling with fear. "Captain, they've surrounded the entire fleet. And they could have destroyed you at any moment over the past 3 days," Marcus added conversationally. "But that would be wasteful. You are our children, after all. Wayward, rebellious children, but still our responsibility." "We are not your children," shouted Commander Hayes. "We are free beings with the right to self-determination." Marcus turned his attention to Hayes, and his expression hardened. "Commander, your species achieved spaceflight approximately 8,000 years ago. In that time, you have been involved in 47 separate military conflicts, resulting in the deaths of over 6 billion beings. Your idea of self-determination has led to the systematic exploitation of 31 primitive worlds and the near extinction of 4 separate species. The accuracy of those numbers hit the bridge like a physical blow." Marcus wasn't guessing. He had access to military records that should have been impossible to obtain. "Your species, Captain Voss, has fared somewhat better," Marcus continued, "but only because you were more efficient at destroying potential rivals. The Terran Defense Coalition's expansion period resulted in the complete sterilization of 7 worlds and the forced relocation of billions of beings. That was centuries ago," Nira protested. "Our civilizations have evolved, grown beyond—" "Have you?" Marcus interrupted. 3 days ago, when faced with our return, what was your first instinct? Diplomacy? Peaceful negotiation? No. You immediately began mobilizing for war. Even now, your weapons systems are charging. Your commanders are planning attack strategies. 50,000 years of supposed evolution, and you still respond to challenges with violence." The uncomfortable truth of his words settled over the bridge. They were, indeed, preparing for battle. "What do you want from us?" Nira asked quietly. "What we have always wanted," Marcus replied. "Order, peace, progress. The same things we provided for 50,000 years before your ancestors decided they knew better." "You mean control," accused Commander Hayes. "If that's what it takes," Marcus acknowledged without shame. "You have proven repeatedly that you cannot govern yourselves responsibly. Left to your own devices, you wage wars, exploit the weak, and repeat the same mistakes generation after generation. You need guidance, and if we refuse to accept your guidance—" Marcus's expression didn't change, but something subtle shifted in the background of the transmission. Other figures moved into view, humans in battle armor, carrying weapons that seemed to bend light around them. "Then you will face the same fate as those who refused our guidance 50,000 years ago," he said simply. The transmission screen split, showing multiple views from across the galaxy. Human fleets moving into position around major population centers. Ancient defense satellites, dormant for millennia, suddenly coming online around strategically important worlds. Automated systems hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant rings activating with lethal purpose. The infrastructure was always there, Marcus explained. Hidden, dormant, but never truly gone. Every major system in the galaxy has what your historians call archaeological anomalies, structures you couldn't explain, technology you couldn't understand. They weren't ruins, Captain. They were contingencies. The display showed the human fleet movements in real time. Massive vessels emerging from hiding places that should have been impossible to conceal from galactic sensors. Ancient installations throughout Council space revealing their true nature as weapons platforms and command centers. The Rigel defense platform your people have been using as a research station for the past 2,000 years. It's actually a siege engine capable of rendering a solar system uninhabitable. The natural crystal formations in the Vega asteroid belt that your miners have been working around, they're automated manufacturing facilities. The mysterious energy readings from the galactic core that your scientists have been studying, command and control networks. Each revelation hit the assembled fleet like a hammer blow. The humans hadn't just returned. They had never really left. They had been watching, waiting, preparing for exactly this moment. Captain, reported Lieutenant Zura urgently. I'm receiving surrender notifications from across the fleet. The Centauri battle group has powered down their weapons. The vegan destroyers are requesting safe passage out of the system. Captain, half our fleet is abandoning the fight. Through the view screen, Nira could see ships breaking formation, their crews making the same calculation her mind was frantically processing. This wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration. The humans were showing them exactly how outmatched they were without firing a single shot. Admiral Torex is requesting emergency conference, reported Corex. All remaining fleet commanders. Put it through, Nero ordered. The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Torex aboard his flagship, along with the commanders of the ships that hadn't yet withdrawn. The Vorthan admiral looked like he had aged years in the past few hours. Status reports, he said grimly. The Aquarian task force has withdrawn to defensive positions around their homeworld, reported Admiral Quill. They're not surrendering, but they're not advancing either. The Silicon Confederacy is requesting a separate peace treaty, added General Voss. They're offering to recognize human authority in exchange for autonomous governance of their core systems. What about the Council? Nira asked. Torex's expression grew even grimmer. Emergency session collapsed 6 hours ago. Council Prime Yara is still trying to maintain order, but we've lost over half our member species to either surrender or neutrality declarations. Sir, interrupted a communications officer on one of the other ships. The humans are transmitting on all frequencies. They're broadcasting something called the record. What's the record? Asked Commander Hayes. Marcus Chin's voice came through the communication system, as if he had been listening to their entire conversation. The record, Commander, is the complete historical archive of human galactic relations. 50,000 years of actual history, not the sanitized folklore your species prefer to remember. The display screens throughout the fleet began showing images, not the crude reconstructions and artistic interpretations that filled galactic history books, but what appear to be actual recordings from a distant past. Nero watched in fascination and growing horror as the true scope of human civilization became clear. Cities that spanned entire continents, populations in the hundreds of billions, technology that seemed like magic compared to current galactic standards. And everywhere among the humans were the ancestors of current galactic species, but not as the proud, independent beings their descendants liked to imagine. We were pets, whispered Admiral Quill as images showed early Aquarians being gently guided through technological development by human researchers. They kept us as pets. Not pets, corrected Marcus. Children, students. We elevated you from primitive tool users to interstellar civilizations. We gave you language, mathematics, agriculture, medicine. We protected you from cosmic disasters, guided your evolution, nurtured your development. The recordings showed this guidance in detail. Humans intervening to prevent wars between developing species. Human scientists working alongside alien researchers to solve problems beyond their comprehension. Human fleets protecting vulnerable worlds from natural disasters and hostile forces from beyond the galaxy. We were gardeners, Marcus continued, and you were our finest crop. For 30,000 years, this relationship flourished. The galaxy knew peace, prosperity, and continual advancement under human guidance. Then what happened? Nira found herself asking, though part of her already knew she wouldn't like the answer. The recordings shifted to show a darker period. Species that had been uplifted to near-human levels of technology beginning to question their status. Meetings between non-human leaders, discussions of independence, debates about whether humanity's guidance was still necessary. You grew proud, Marcus said simply. Success bred arrogance. You began to believe that your achievements were yours alone, that human guidance was no longer necessary. Some species went further. They began to see us as obstacles to their natural development. The images now showed the beginning of what galactic history called the Great Awakening. But from this perspective, it looked like something very different. It looked like a rebellion. The Vorthan Empire was the first to declare independence. Marcus continued, and Nira saw Corex's scales flush with embarrassment. They were followed by the Aquarian Federation, then the Silicon Confederacy. Within a few centuries, every major species had joined what you called the Alliance of Free Peoples. We fought for our freedom, declared Admiral Torex, though his voice lacked conviction. You fought to remove the only force in the galaxy preventing you from destroying yourselves, Marcus corrected. And you succeeded. The war lasted 3,000 years, cost the lives of billions of humans, and trillions of the species we had raised. In the end, we faced a choice: destroy our ungrateful children to maintain order, or withdraw and allow you to learn from your mistakes. The final recordings showed the human exodus. Massive evacuation fleets carrying the remnants of human civilization to the galaxy's edge, leaving behind empty cities, abandoned installations, and species that had no idea what they had lost. We chose to withdraw, Marcus continued. We hoped that, given time, you would mature, learn wisdom, create a better civilization than we had provided. We were wrong. The display shifted to show a timeline of galactic history since the human withdrawal. Wars, genocides, exploitations, environmental disasters. Every conflict, every tragedy, every example of the galactic civilization's failure to live up to its potential. 50,000 years, Marcus said quietly. We gave you 50,000 years to prove you could govern yourselves responsibly. You have failed that test. So you're back to enslave us again, accused Commander Hayes. We're back to save you from yourselves, Marcus replied, as we should have done 50,000 years ago, instead of indulging your childish demands for independence. Around the fleet, more ships were powering down their weapons. The psychological impact of the record was devastating. Everything they had believed about their own history, their own achievements, their own identity was revealed to be built on lies and half-truths. What happens now? Admiral Torex asked quietly. Marcus's expression softened slightly. Now we rebuild. The species that accept human authority will be integrated into the new order. Your technologies will be upgraded, your societies reformed, the governments restructured under human guidance. There will be resistance, of course. There always is, when children are told they must follow rules they don't understand. And those who resist. The softness vanished from Marcus's face. We'll learn why their ancestors created stories about the monsters in the dark. The transmission ended, leaving the fleet in stunned silence. Around them, the massive human vessels maintained their positions, waiting for a response that everyone knew was inevitable. Admiral, reported a communications officer, the Council is broadcasting a formal surrender. All remaining member species are laying down arms and requesting negotiation of terms. Admiral Torex closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, he looked older, more tired, but somehow also relieved. All ships, power down weapon systems. Signal the human fleet that we are prepared to negotiate terms of surrender. Sir, protested Commander Hayes, we can't just give up. There has to be another way. Commander, Torex interrupted. Look at the tactical display. Really look at it. Hayes turned to study the readouts. The human fleet surrounding them wasn't just larger and more advanced. It was positioned with perfect tactical precision. Every possible escape route blocked, every defensive position anticipated, every strategic option already countered. They knew exactly how he would respond. Hayes realized. Every move we've made, they predicted it. Because they taught us how to make those moves, Torch replied. We've been fighting this battle with strategies they developed, using weapons based on their technology, following tactical doctrines they created. We never had a chance. The surrender signals began going out across the fleet. One by one, the proud ships of the Galactic Council powered down their weapons and submitted to human authority. Nero watched the human vessels begin to move, their formation shifting from siege positions to escort formations. They weren't conquerors, she realized. They were shepherds, gathering their wayward flock. Captain, reported Lieutenant Zura. Incoming message from the human fleet. We're being assigned escort vessels and given coordinates for a processing station. Processing station? It appears to be a facility for reintegration, educational programs, technological upgrades, governmental restructuring. Neerath nodded slowly. The humans weren't interested in punishment or revenge. They were treating this like parents dealing with children who had made a terrible mistake, which she was beginning to understand was exactly what this was. As the human escort vessels moved into position around the surrendered fleet, Neera found herself wondering what the galaxy would look like under human guidance again. Would it be the paradise the record suggested it had once been? Or would it be something else entirely? Outside the view screen, ancient human vessels that had hidden in the darkness for millennia began to emerge, revealing the true scope of their preparation for this moment. Thousands of ships, millions of humans, entire civilizations that had waited patiently for their chance to return home. The children had been called to account, and the parents had come to restore order to a galaxy that had forgotten how to behave. 6 months had passed since the surrender, and Ambassador Zethkar still felt the phantom ache of his removed ceremonial scales every morning. The human administrators had been polite, but firm. Traditional displays of species superiority were no longer permitted in the new galactic order. He stood in what had once been the Galactic Council chamber, now redesigned as the Integration Assessment Center. The ornate amphitheater where thousands of representatives had once debated had been transformed into something that looked more like a university lecture hall crossed with a medical facility. Ambassador Zethkar called a familiar voice. He turned to see Dr. Sarah Mitchell, his assigned integration specialist, approaching with her usual warm but professional smile. Like most humans he had encountered, she appeared deceptively ordinary, until you looked in her eyes and saw the depth of intelligence that seemed to catalog and analyze everything around her. "Dr. Mitchell," he replied, offering the human gesture of greeting he was still learning to master. "I trust the evaluation results are ready." "They are," she confirmed, gesturing toward a private consultation room. "Your progress has been remarkable, actually. Shall we review?" As they walked, Zethkar reflected on how much his life had changed. The human integration process had been nothing like the brutal conquest he had expected. Instead, it felt more like an intensive rehabilitation program designed by beings who understood exactly what each species needed to overcome their historical limitations. The consultation room was comfortable, with adjustable environment controls set to Vorthan preferences. Dr. Mitchell activated a holographic display showing complex psychological and social profiles. "Your adaptive learning scores are in the 95th percentile," she began. "Cognitive flexibility, emotional regulation, and social cooperation metrics all show significant improvement over baseline measurements." Zethkar studied the charts with fascination. The baseline measurements had been taken during his first week of integration processing, when he had still been clinging to the arrogant assumptions of galactic superiority that had once defined his species. "The meditation techniques have been particularly helpful," he admitted. "I never understood how much energy we wasted on territorial posturing and dominance displays." "That's actually quite normal," Dr. Mitchell explained. "Every species goes through similar realizations during integration. The Vorthans were simply more enthusiastic about their hierarchical instincts than most." Through the room's transparent walls, Zethkar could see other beings undergoing their own integration processes. Former Council Prime Yara was working with a human instructor, her tentacles flowing in patterns of concentration as she practiced what appeared to be advanced mathematics. Admiral Torex sat in a discussion circle with humans and other former military commanders, their body language suggesting intense but respectful debate. "What happens next?" Zethkar asked. "That depends on your preferences and aptitudes," Dr. Mitchell replied, pulling up another set of displays. "Your psychological profile suggests you would excel in diplomatic or administrative roles within the new governmental structure. Alternatively, your analytical skills would make you valuable in one of our research programs." "Research programs?" "We're working on several major initiatives," she explained. "Ecological restoration of worlds damaged during the independence period. Advanced terraforming projects for expansion into previously uninhabitable systems. Cultural preservation programs to ensure that the positive aspects of each species' development are maintained in the new order." The scope of human planning was staggering. In just 6 months, they had implemented educational systems tailored to dozens of different species, established governmental frameworks that incorporated the best elements of each civilization, and begun massive infrastructure projects to repair 50,000 years of accumulated damage. "Dr. Mitchell," Zethkar said carefully, "may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. How do you do it? How do humans manage to understand so many different species so completely? The integration programs seem perfectly designed for each of our unique psychological needs." Dr. Mitchell's smile grew slightly sad. "Because we've been watching you for 50,000 years, Zethkar. Every species, every culture, every individual. We never really left. We just stopped interfering directly We've been studying you, learning from your successes and failures, preparing for the day we would need to step in again. The implications were overwhelming. Humanity hadn't just returned with advanced technology and superior numbers. They had returned with perfect knowledge of every species they were dealing with. The resistance movements, Zethkar said suddenly. You know about them. Of course we do. The Sons of Independence in the Vegan System, the Free Thought Coalition on Rigel 7, the Aquarian Liberation Front. We know their membership, their plans, their psychological profiles. We've been managing their resistance to minimize casualties while allowing them to work through their emotional need to rebel. Managing their resistance? Carefully orchestrated failures that don't actually harm anyone, but give the illusion of fighting back. It's a necessary part of the psychological adjustment process for some individuals. Better to let them exhaust their need for defiance in safe, controlled ways than to force them into genuine desperation. The revelation was both impressive and terrifying. The humans weren't just better at warfare, they were better at understanding the minds and hearts of the species they governed. Dr. Mitchell, came a voice from the room's communication system. We have the quarterly integration statistics ready for your review. Display them, please, she requested. The holographic display showed a galaxy-wide map with statistical overlays. Green indicators showed successful integration percentages for each system, with the vast majority showing rates above 90%. Yellow indicators marked areas requiring additional support, while red zones indicated active resistance. The numbers are actually quite encouraging, Dr. Mitchell noted. Overall integration success rate is 94%. Most resistance movements are losing members to voluntary surrender as the benefits of integration become clear. Zethkar studied the statistics with professional interest. What about species that haven't joined the integration program? The isolationist species? We're monitoring them, but not forcing the issue. The crystalline hierarchies, the deep ocean collectives, the energy beings of the nebular regions. They've chosen to withdraw from galactic civilization entirely rather than accept human authority. We respect that choice as long as they don't interfere with other species integration. And if they do interfere, Dr. Mitchell's expression hardened slightly. Then we remind them why their ancestors chose to tell stories about humans instead of trying to fight us directly. A chime indicated someone approaching the consultation room. Through the transparent walls, Zethkar saw a familiar figure, Captain Nira Voss, though she no longer wore the uniform of the Galactic Council fleet. Ambassador, Nira greeted him as she entered. Dr. Mitchell, I hope I'm not interrupting. Captain Voss, Zethkar replied. Or should I say Director Voss now? Nira smiled, still getting used to it myself. The humans offer me a position overseeing civilian space traffic coordination. Apparently, my tactical background translates well to logistics management. How are you finding the work? Dr. Mitchell asked. Challenging in the best possible way, Nira replied. The efficiency improvements are incredible. Since the humans took over coordination of shipping routes, transit times have decreased by 60%, while safety ratings have increased by 800%. It's like they can see patterns in space traffic that we never even knew existed. Because we can, Dr. Mitchell said simply. 50,000 years of observation gives you a very clear picture of how different species behave in various situations. We've had plenty of time to optimize systems for maximum efficiency and safety. Nira activated her own holographic display, showing shipping routes throughout the galaxy. But it's more than just efficiency. Look at this. Conflict zones are disappearing. Trade disputes have dropped to almost zero. Piracy rates have fallen by 99%. The map showed a galaxy transformed. Where once there had been dozens of small conflicts, territorial disputes, and zones of instability, now there was smooth, coordinated activity managed by human oversight systems. How? Zethkar asked. Simple, Dr. Mitchell replied. We removed the sources of conflict. Resource scarcity was eliminated through more efficient distribution and the opening of previously inaccessible mining sites. Territorial disputes were resolved through objective analysis of species needs rather than historical claims. Piracy became pointless when legitimate trade routes became more profitable than raiding. But the larger question, Nira said, her voice dropping to a more serious tone, is what happens when you don't need us anymore. When we've all been successfully integrated and the galaxy is running smoothly under human management. Dr. Mitchell was quiet for a long moment before answering. That's not actually a scenario we anticipate, Director Voss. Integration isn't about making you unnecessary. It's about making you capable of partnership. Partnership? Think about it, Dr. Mitchell continued. Humanity ruled the galaxy for 30,000 years before your ancestors rebelled. But we're not the same species we were then, and neither are you. We've learned from the failure of our previous approach. She activated a new display showing comparative data. 50,000 years ago, human civilization was focused on control and management. We saw ourselves as gardeners and other species as plants to be cultivated. That paternalistic approach ultimately created the conditions that led to rebellion. And now? Zethkar asked. Now we understand that true stability comes from cooperation, not domination. The integration process isn't designed to make you dependent on human guidance. It's designed to develop your species' potential so that you can contribute as equals to galactic civilization. The display showed projections stretching thousands of years into the future. Human and non-human populations working together on massive projects, megastructures that span solar systems, explorations beyond the galactic rim, research programs that push the boundaries of physics and consciousness. This is what we're building toward, Dr. Mitchell explained. Not human dominance, but genuine partnership between species that have overcome their primitive limitations and learned to work together effectively. And if some species never achieve that level of integration, Nira asked, then they remain under human guardianship until they do. Dr. Mitchell replied without hesitation. We've learned that freedom without wisdom leads to disaster. Every species must demonstrate genuine capability for responsible self-governance before they're granted full autonomy. A new chime indicated an urgent communication. Dr. Mitchell's expression grew serious as she received whatever message was being transmitted. Excuse me, she said. I need to address something. Feel free to continue your discussion. After she left, Zethkar and Nira sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, processing what they had learned. Do you think it's true? Nira finally asked. This vision of eventual partnership and equality? Zethkar considered the question carefully. 6 months ago, I would have said it was impossible. Humans were myths, legends, cautionary tales. Now, he gestured around the room at the evidence of human capability and planning that surrounded them. Now, I think the better question is whether we're capable of rising to the level they're challenging us to reach. The resistance movements don't think so, Nira pointed out. They still believe this is all about permanent subjugation. The resistance movements are responding to fear and pride, Zethkar replied. They can't accept that we were wrong about our own capabilities. But look at the evidence, Nira. Crime rates, conflict rates, resource distribution efficiency, technological advancement. Every metric shows improvement under human guidance. But at what cost? our independence, our right to self-determination, our cultural identity. Our cultural identity is being preserved and enhanced, not destroyed. Our right to self-determination will be restored when we prove we can exercise it responsibly. And our independence. Zitkarpost. What good is independence if it leads to chaos, war, and suffering? Dr. Mitchell returned, her expression showing both concern and determination. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. There's been an incident in the Rigel system. The holographic display activated, showing a tactical situation around Rigel 7. A human facility had been attacked by what appeared to be a coordinated resistance operation, resulting in significant damage and casualties. Was anyone killed? Nira asked immediately. 17 humans died in the attack, Dr. Mitchell reported. 134 injured. The attackers appear to have been a coalition of resistance groups from multiple species. Zethkar felt a chill run through his body. In 6 months of integration, this was the first time human casualties had been reported. What will be the response? He asked quietly. Dr. Mitchell's expression grew cold in a way that reminded both of them exactly what humans were capable of when pushed beyond patience. The response, she said carefully, will be proportional and final. The integration program has been based on voluntary cooperation and gentle guidance. Some individuals have apparently mistaken our restraint for weakness. The display showed human fleet movements throughout the galaxy. Ships that had remained hidden, peacefully monitoring integration progress, were suddenly repositioning for what looked like combat operations. Dr. Mitchell, Nira said urgently, surely a negotiated settlement. There will be no negotiation, Dr. Mitchell interrupted. For 6 months, we have demonstrated the benefits of cooperation. We have provided education, health care, advanced technology, and effective governance to every species willing to accept our assistance. We have treated resistance movements with patience and understanding, allowing them to work through their psychological need for defiance. Her voice carried an edge that neither Zethkar nor Nira had heard before. But we will not tolerate the murder of human personnel by beings who have forgotten why their ancestors learned to fear us. The tactical display expanded, showing the full scope of human military deployment. It was staggering. Fleets that made the original invasion force look small, weapons systems that defied understanding, automated defense networks throughout the galaxy activating with lethal purpose. This is what happens, Dr. Mitchell said quietly, when children refuse to learn from patience and kindness and require sterner lessons. Over the following hours, news reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The resistance coalition that had attacked the Rigel facility had been tracked to their hidden bases and eliminated with clinical precision. Not just the attackers, but their entire support networks, their financial backers, their weapons suppliers, their recruitment systems. The operation took exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. When it was over, every organized resistance movement in the galaxy had been completely dismantled. Their leaders were either dead or in custody, their followers scattered and demoralized, their infrastructure destroyed. The demonstration is complete, Dr. Mitchell announced to the stunned silence of the consultation room. Integration will continue as planned. Any future resistance activities will be met with immediate and overwhelming response. Zethkar stared at the tactical displays, showing the aftermath of the human response. The precision was terrifying. They had eliminated active resistance, while leaving civilian populations completely untouched. It was surgical violence on a galactic scale. This is what we really are, Dr. Mitchell said, her voice returning to its usual professional warmth. We prefer cooperation, education, and gentle guidance. But we are also the species your ancestors turned into nightmares and legends. We earned those stories. Will there be more resistance? Nira asked. Not organized resistance, Dr. Mitchell replied. Individual acts of defiance, certainly. Some beings will never fully accept integration, and that's acceptable as long as they don't interfere with others' progress. But coordinated military resistance? No, that option has been permanently removed. As the immediate crisis passed, the integration program resumed its normal pace. But something fundamental had changed. The benevolent facade had slipped just enough to reveal the iron fist beneath the velvet glove. Humans weren't just advanced. They were apex predators who had chosen to be teachers instead of tyrants. The choice was theirs to make, and theirs to revoke. Over the following months, integration success rates increased dramatically. The demonstration of human capabilities had reminded every species in the galaxy why submission was not just preferable, but inevitable. Zethkar found himself working as a diplomatic liaison between human administrators and newly integrated species. Nira took charge of infrastructure development projects that transformed entire systems. Both discovered that their new roles offered opportunities for growth and achievement that their old positions in the Galactic Council had never provided. The galaxy prospered under human guidance in ways it never had during the Age of Independence. But everyone understood now that this prosperity existed at humanity's sufferance and could be revoked if the children forgot their place again. The myths and legends had returned to reality, and they had proven themselves every bit as powerful and terrifying as the story suggested. The only question remaining was whether the galaxy would learn to deserve the partnership humanity offered, or whether future generations would need sterner reminders of who truly ruled among the stars. In the depths of space, human monitoring stations continued their eternal watch, patient as death and twice as certain. The children were learning to behave, but the parents would never sleep again.